The ballroom lights caught the medals pinned to an old, faded jacket, and the man wearing it stood alone at the door, being told he didn't belong. "Sir, this entrance is for honored guests only." Preston Kell's voice cut clean across the marble lobby, loud enough for a dozen heads to turn. Marcus Whitfield didn't flinch. He held his invitation steady in one hand, the paper worn soft at the corners from being folded and unfolded too many times to count. "I was told to come through here," Marcus said quietly. "My name should be on the list." Kell barely glanced at the card. "Deliveries go around back. I don't have time for this." A waitress balancing a tray of champagne flutes slowed her steps, watching. Somewhere behind the velvet ropes, a string quartet kept playing, oblivious. Marcus looked down at the invitation one more time, then back up at the young man in the tailored suit, who hadn't even bothered to read his name. "I fought for this country," Marcus said. "I can wait a minute for someone to check a list." Kell's jaw tightened. He didn't know it yet, but in exactly 40 minutes, he would be the one standing outside, wondering how everything had unraveled. Marcus Whitfield had spent 41 years learning how to be invisible in rooms that weren't built for him. He grew up in a two-bedroom house in Macon, Georgia, the third of 5 children, the son of a mechanic who fixed cars for the neighborhood on credit, and a mother who cleaned office buildings downtown. He enlisted at 19, not out of ambition, but because the recruiter's office was 2 blocks from home, and the Army paid for boots that fit. He served 3 tours. He came back quieter than he left, with a limp he hid well, and a habit of checking exits in every room he entered. Now he worked as a maintenance supervisor at a community center, fixed leaky pipes for elderly neighbors on weekends, and coached a youth boxing program on Tuesday nights. Nobody at the gym knew he'd once carried a wounded lieutenant 2 miles under fire. He didn't talk about it. Talking about it never brought anyone back. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks earlier, cream-colored and heavy, from the office of Senator Eleanor Marsh, an annual gala honoring veterans of the state, funded by a foundation Marcus had never heard of. He'd almost thrown it away. His daughter Aaliyah had stopped him. "Dad, you earned this. Just once, let somebody thank you." He'd worn his father's old dress shirt, pressed twice, and pinned on the 3 medals he kept in a shoebox under his bed. He hadn't expected a warm welcome. He hadn't expected this, either. Inside, the ballroom shimmered with the kind of wealth that made quiet men quieter. Chandeliers threw gold light across white tablecloths. A banner read, "Honoring those who served in looping calligraphy." Preston Kell moved through the room like he owned it, clipboard tucked under his arm, greeting donors by name, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. As chief of staff to Senator Marsh, he'd built his career on controlling rooms, who entered, who spoke, who got photographed. He'd worked 11 years to get this close to power, and he guarded the perimeter of that power like a dog guards a bone. When Marcus reached the check-in table again, Kell was there, flanked by a security guard twice his size. "I already told you," Kell said, not lowering his voice this time. "This event has a dress code and a guest list. You're on neither." "Check the list again," Marcus said. "Whitefield." Kell snapped the folder shut without looking. "I don't need to check twice. Security, please escort." "Escort him where?" a voice interrupted. Everyone turned. A young woman in a catering uniform stood a few feet away, tray forgotten on a side table, phone already raised and recording. "He has an invitation," she said. "I watched him hand it to you." Kell's smile faltered, just for a second. The first crack in the evening. The video hit social media before dessert was served. Dana Reyes hadn't planned to post it. She'd only meant to send it to her sister. A quick clip of the moment that made her stomach turn. But her thumb slipped, or maybe it didn't. And by the time she noticed, 300 people had already watched a decorated veteran get turned away from his own honor. By midnight, it was thousands. Marcus never saw the video that night. He'd left the gala quietly, invitation still clutched in his hand, and walked 2 miles home because he didn't want to sit in silence with a rideshare driver asking questions. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter for an hour before he finally looked. Messages from his daughter. Messages from his boxing kid's parents. A message from a stranger that just read, "Is this you, sir?" He sat down at the table, the shoebox of medals still open beside him, and watched himself get humiliated from a stranger's phone. His hands didn't shake. They'd stopped shaking a long time ago. "Dad!" Aaliyah's voice came through the door before she even knocked. "Dad, it's everywhere." "I saw," he said. "Are you okay?" Marcus looked at the screen one more time, at Kel's clipboard, at his own face trying to stay calm. "I don't know yet," he said, "because somewhere out there, a senator's office was waking up to a scandal, and someone was about to decide whether the truth mattered more than the damage control. By morning, Senator Eleanor Marsh's office was on fire, though not the kind anyone could see. Her communications director burst into her home study at 6:40 a.m., laptop already open. "You need to see this before the papers do." Marsh watched the video twice. 58 years old, silver-streaked hair pulled back. She'd built her career on a reputation for integrity that took decades to earn and could be lost in a single news cycle. "Who is he?" she asked. "A veteran. Marcus Whitfield. 3 tours, according to public records. That's all we've got so far. And Preston did this at my event. He's saying it was a security misunderstanding." Marsh closed the laptop slowly. "Get me his file. Not Preston's excuse. The veteran's file." Her aide hesitated. "Ma'am, there's something else. Legal wants to release a statement distancing the office from Preston's individual conduct." "Absolutely not," Marsh said. "We don't hide behind an intern's mistake when he's my chief of staff." She stood by the window, watching the sun climb over rooftops she'd represented for 2 decades, and felt the shape of something she couldn't name yet. A name she hadn't seen in 15 years, buried somewhere in old deployment records. "Whitfield," she said softly, testing the syllables. "Why does that sound familiar?" Preston Kell had survived worse storms than this, or so he told himself, pacing his office at 7 the next morning. "It's a nothing story," he said to his assistant, more to convince himself than her. "A misunderstanding gets blown up by some catering girl with a phone. It'll die in 48 hours. "It's not dying," his assistant said, turning her screen toward him. "It's the top story on 3 local news sites. Someone tagged the senator directly." Kell's stomach tightened. He hadn't told Marsh the full story yet. Hadn't mentioned that he'd never actually opened the guest folder to check the name. That his own arrogance had done this, not some clerical error. His phone rang, Marsh's name on the screen. "I need everything you have on last night," she said, no greeting. "The real version, Preston, not the one for reporters." "Senator, it was a simple mix-up at check-in. There's a witness recording that says otherwise. I watched it 4 times. Her voice was flat, controlled, dangerous. "Was the man's name on the list?" Silence stretched long enough to answer the question itself. "Preston." "Yes," he finally said. "It was on the list." The line went quiet. Then, "Come to my office, now, and bring the folder. I want to see exactly whose name you didn't bother to read." He hung up, hands cold, staring at a scandal he'd built with his own 2 hands, and no idea yet how much bigger it was about to become. The folder sat open on Senator Marsh's desk that afternoon, and inside it was something that made the room go very still. Not just an RSVP card, a full nomination form submitted months earlier by the state's Veterans Affairs Office, recommending Marcus Whitfield for a long-overdue commendation review. One tied to a mission report from 15 years ago that had somehow never been fully processed. Marsh read the unit designation twice. Her hand went still over the page. "This can't be right," she murmured. Her chief legal counsel, a careful woman named Renata Cho, looked up. "Ma'am?" "This unit," Marsh said. "This is my son's old unit." The room shifted. Kell, seated stiffly across the desk, felt the floor tilt beneath him without understanding why. "Senator, I don't follow—" "You wouldn't," Marsh cut in. "Not unkindly, just exhausted. You didn't serve. You've never had to know a name that mattered this much." She didn't say more. She just stared at the unit number, at a memory she'd kept folded away for 15 years, the way Marcus had kept his invitation folded in his pocket. Something had connected two strangers in that ballroom without either of them knowing it. And the truth was about to surface whether Kell wanted it to or not. 2 days later, the story had teeth. National outlets picked it up. Veterans groups issued statements. A hashtag formed that Marsh's team couldn't control anymore, even if they'd wanted to. Marcus, for his part, wanted none of it. He turned down 3 interview requests before lunch, sitting in his cramped kitchen with Aaliyah hovering by the stove, trying to talk him into at least one. "You don't owe anyone your silence, Dad." "I don't owe anyone my story either," Marcus said. "That's mine." His phone rang again, a number he didn't recognize, local area code. He almost let it go to voicemail. Something made him answer. "Mr. Whitfield? This is Renata Cho from Senator Marsh's office. She'd like to speak with you personally. Today, if possible." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Tell the senator I don't need an apology tour." "It's not about an apology, sir. It's about your service file. There's something in it she believes you should see." Marcus went quiet. Aaliyah watched his face change, the careful stillness cracking just slightly. "What kind of something?" "I think it's better she explains in person," Cho said. "Can you come to the Capitol office at 4? Marcus looked down at the shoebox of medals still sitting on his counter, unreturned to its place under the bed. "I'll be there," he said, though he had no idea what waited for him, or that the answer had been sealed in a file for 15 years, one signature short of ever reaching him. The Capitol office was smaller than Marcus expected. No marble, no gold, just tired carpet and a wall of framed photographs from 3 decades of public service. Senator Marsh rose from behind her desk when he entered, and something in her face made him stop in the doorway. "Mr. Whitfield, thank you for coming." "You said there was something in my file," Marcus said, not sitting. Marsh slid a photograph across the desk instead of answering directly. A young soldier, mid-20s, dust-covered, grinning despite a bandaged arm. Marcus's breath caught. "You know him," Marsh said. It wasn't a question. "Lieutenant Daniel Marsh," Marcus said slowly. "2nd Platoon. We called him Danny." He looked up. "He's your son." "He is," Marsh said, voice unsteady for the first time since this began. "And for 15 years, he's told me one story about the man who carried him 2 miles through gunfire after an IED took out half his squad. He never knew your name. The records were incomplete. He just called you the medic who wouldn't put him down." Marcus sat down slowly, the room tilting around him. "That was you," Marsh whispered, "wasn't it?" He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. Marcus stared at the photograph for a long moment before he spoke, and when he did, his voice was quieter than the room itself. "He kept apologizing," Marcus said, "the whole way. Said he was too heavy, said to leave him, said it wasn't worth 2 lives for one." He shook his head. "I told him to shut up and count backward from 100. He got to 60 before we reached the extraction point." Marsh pressed a hand to her mouth. "I put him in for a citation," Marcus continued. "Never heard anything back. Figured it got lost, like most things do." "It didn't get lost," Marsh said. "It got buried, under a commanding officer who didn't want the paperwork, and then under 15 years of nobody asking the right question." She met his eyes. "My son has spent a decade trying to find you. He didn't even know your first name. Marcus, he said. Marcus Whitfield. Daniel is going to want to hear that, Marsh said, in person, and soon. Outside the office door, unnoticed by either of them, Preston Kell stood frozen in the hallway, having heard every word, and understanding, for the first time, exactly whose name he had refused to read 2 nights before. Kell didn't sleep that night. He sat in his apartment replaying the hallway conversation on a loop, the weight of it settling heavier with every pass. He'd humiliated a man who'd saved the senator's son. He'd done it on camera, in public, with a smugness he could no longer excuse as a simple oversight. His phone buzzed with a message from Marsh's scheduling office. Mandatory meeting, 9 a.m., senator's office. Attendance required. He arrived early, hoping to control the narrative before it controlled him. Marsh was already seated, along with Renata Cho and, to his visible shock, Marcus Whitfield himself, sitting calm and upright near the window. "Preston," Marsh said, "sit down." He sat. "Do you know who this man is?" she asked. "I've learned," Kell said carefully, "that he served with distinction, and that there was an unfortunate mistake at check-in." "An unfortunate mistake," Marcus repeated, not raising his voice. "You called security on me in front of a room full of people because you didn't like the way I looked standing at your door." Kell opened his mouth, then closed it. There was no version of an excuse that survived contact with the truth sitting in front of him. "I'm listening," Marsh said, "if you have anything real to say." Kell's excuses had run out somewhere in the hallway the night before, and he knew it. "I was wrong," he said finally. "I didn't check the list because I assumed. I saw a black man in an old jacket at a formal event, and I decided who he was before I ever looked at his name." His voice cracked slightly. "That's the truth. There's no security explanation that makes it better." The room went silent. Marcus studied him for a long moment, not with triumph, but with something closer to tired recognition, the kind that came from having heard some version of that sentence before, in different rooms, from different men. "At least you said it out loud," Marcus said. Marsh folded her hands on the desk. "Preston, you'll be placed on administrative leave, effective today, pending a full review of your conduct. I won't have someone representing my office who treats dignity as optional." "Senator, I've worked 11 years. "And in one night," Marsh said, "you undid the one thing 11 years should have taught you." She stood. "This isn't about politics anymore. It's about whether the people I represent are safe from the people who work for me." Kell looked at Marcus one more time, searching for something. Forgiveness, maybe, or just permission to leave with less shame than he'd walked in with. Marcus offered him neither, and neither did the silence that followed him out the door. The rescheduled ceremony took place 11 days later, not in the same gilded ballroom, but on the steps of the State Veterans Memorial, open to the public, cameras rolling for reasons no one needed to explain twice. Marcus stood at the podium in his father's old dress shirt, freshly pressed, the same 3 medals pinned to his chest. Aaliyah sat in the front row, hands clasped so tight, her knuckles had gone pale. Senator Marsh approached the microphone first. "15 years ago," she said, "a young medic carried my son 2 miles through gunfire, refusing to let him go, refusing to let him die." Her voice wavered, then steadied. "That medic's citation was lost in paperwork for 15 years. 2 weeks ago, he was denied entry to an event meant to honor men exactly like him." The crowd was silent, waiting. "Today, we correct both mistakes." A tall young man in a dress uniform stepped forward from the wings. Lieutenant Daniel Marsh, walking without a limp, though everyone in that unit knew what it had cost to get there. Marcus's breath caught. 15 years, and he was finally looking at the man he'd once counted backward with. Alive. "You never told me your name," Daniel said, voice thick. I've spent 10 years looking for it. Daniel Marsh crossed the stage and stopped directly in front of Marcus, close enough that the cameras caught every second of it. Sergeant Whitfield, he said, and something in the formality of it made Marcus stand a little straighter, old habit returning without thought. Lieutenant, Marcus answered. Daniel raised his hand and held a salute, slow and deliberate, the kind meant to be seen, meant to be remembered. Marcus hesitated only a moment before returning it, the gesture settling into his bones like it had never left. Behind them, Senator Marsh read the citation aloud, the one that had waited 15 years to be spoken, for extraordinary courage and selfless service in the face of hostile fire, disregarding personal safety to save the life of a fellow soldier. The crowd rose to their feet, applause rolling like weather across the steps. Dana Reyes stood near the back, phone lowered this time, no longer needing to record proof that the truth mattered. She'd already seen where that truth led. Somewhere in the crowd, unseen, Preston Kell watched from a distance he'd chosen for himself, no longer welcome close enough to shake the hand of the man he'd once turned away. Marcus didn't look for him. He didn't need to. He had somewhere better to look. At his daughter's face, streaked with tears, finally watching someone thank her father the way he'd always deserved. That evening, after the cameras packed up and the crowd thinned into the ordinary business of dusk, Marcus sat on the memorial steps beside Daniel, medals catching the last orange light. You could have told them, Daniel said, about the search. 10 years of dead ends, false names, closed files. Wasn't looking to be found, Marcus said. Wasn't looking for any of this. I know, Daniel smiled faintly. That's usually how it goes with men like you. Aaliyah joined them a moment later, sitting on her father's other side, resting her head briefly against his shoulder. Senator Marsh lingered nearby, watching the three of them without interrupting, understanding that some moments belong to no one but the people living inside them. You don't owe this country anything more, Daniel said quietly. You already paid it in full. Marcus looked out at the darkening memorial grounds, at names carved into stone belonging to men who never got a stage, a citation, a salute. None of us are keeping score, he said. We just wanted somebody to remember. He reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand, medals catching one last glint of sun before the light gave way entirely to evening. Dignity restored not with noise, but with quiet, finally, after 15 patient years. So tell us, where in the world are you watching this from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories travel. If Marcus's story moved you, do us a favor and hit that like button. It helps more than you'd think. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. There's always another story of quiet courage waiting to be told. We'll see you there.